In life, relationships are often characterized by moments of closeness, shared experiences, and a sense of togetherness. However, just as deeply as we can feel the joy of connection, we also come to understand the pain of separation. The moments when someone we care about leaves, whether physically or emotionally, can be overwhelming. Yet in those very moments, something deeper happens that we often overlook: the inner workings of the human soul as it grapples with loss. Stoicism, a philosophy that has been practiced for centuries, offers a unique lens through which we can understand the emotions that arise when someone realizes you're gone. In this reflection, we'll explore how they feel deep down when they experience your absence and how Stoic principles can help us navigate this emotional landscape. The moment of realization. It begins with the moment of realization. Perhaps it's gradual, as they slowly notice the empty spaces where you once were. A text message that goes unanswered, a room that feels too quiet, a seat at the table that no longer has your presence. Or maybe it hits them all at once. The sudden void, the echo of silence, the overwhelming absence that seems to consume everything. This is when the gravity of your departure settles into their hearts and minds. The first response: denial. Initially, the response may not be one of clarity, but denial. They may convince themselves that this is temporary, that it's just a phase, or that perhaps you'll come back. This is a defense mechanism, the mind's way of avoiding the pain of reality. Denial is not weakness, but rather a natural response to shock. In Stoic terms, it is a form of emotional resistance, an attempt to assert control over something that feels uncontrollable. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us that while we cannot control external events, we do have power over our own reactions. In this stage of denial, they are struggling to control their perception, to delay the inevitable truth that you are gone. The struggle with regret. As time passes, the walls of denial begin to crumble, and the weight of reality presses down more firmly. This is when regret begins to take hold. Regret is a natural emotion for anyone who feels that they have lost something valuable. It is the what-ifs and the if-onlys, those nagging thoughts that torment the mind, questioning what could have been different, what was said or unsaid, what actions were taken or left undone. The Stoics remind us that regret is an emotion that stems from focusing on things outside of our control. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that instead of lamenting the past, we must learn to accept it for what it is, for the past cannot be changed. Regret is an invitation to embrace acceptance, to acknowledge that what has been lost is gone, and that we are free to move forward. The wave of anger and resentment, as the person comes to terms with their own regret, anger and resentment often follow. The realization that they have been left behind can stir feelings of betrayal, frustration, and even bitterness. They may lash out, whether through words or actions, blaming you for leaving, or blaming themselves for allowing the situation to unfold. Anger arises when we feel powerless or unjustly treated. But Stoicism teaches us that anger is a destructive force that clouds our judgment. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, argues that anger is a momentary madness. It distorts reality and harms the individual who harbors it. The Stoic approach is not to suppress anger, but to recognize its presence, understand its roots, and choose not to act impulsively. By practicing mindfulness and tempering their responses, the person can begin to regain their emotional balance, the longing and the search for meaning. Amidst the emotional turmoil, there is an inevitable longing, a yearning for what once was. This longing is not just for your physical presence, but for the connection, the shared moments, the comfort, and the sense of belonging. It is the deep desire to recapture something lost. This longing can become a source of suffering, especially if it turns into an obsessive search for meaning or closure. The Stoics remind us that meaning is not something we find in external circumstances, but something we create within ourselves. They teach that true contentment comes from within, and that we must learn to find peace in our own thoughts and actions, not in the presence or absence of others. It is through this internal process of self-reflection that one can learn to find peace even in the face of longing. The transformation of suffering, as the person processes their emotions, The intense pain of loss gradually begins to transform. The Stoics speak of the concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. This idea encourages us to embrace life as it comes, with all its ups and downs, and to accept that suffering is a part of the human experience. Rather than resisting the pain, the Stoic approach invites us to see it as an opportunity for growth and self-improvement. The pain of your absence may become a catalyst for personal transformation. Through the struggle with grief, they may come to understand more deeply what it means to love, to lose, and to heal. This is not to say that the pain goes away entirely, but rather that it becomes integrated into the fabric of their being in a way that fosters resilience and wisdom. The final acceptance and release. In the final stages of this emotional journey, the person begins to come to terms with your absence. They stop fighting the reality of the situation and accept it for what it is. The Stoic concept of ataraxia, a state of serene calmness, becomes their goal. This inner peace is not the absence of emotions, but the ability to maintain composure in the face of those emotions. They learn to detach from the pain of the past and focus on the present moment, recognizing that they can still live a fulfilling life, even without you by their side. Acceptance, as the Stoics teach, is not resignation, but the wisdom to understand that we cannot control everything, and that we are free to choose how we respond to life's challenges. Conclusion. When they realize you're gone, their journey is one of deep emotional turmoil, but also of profound personal growth. Through the stages of denial, regret, anger, longing, and acceptance, they are faced with the full spectrum of human emotions. Yet through the teachings of Stoicism, they can find the strength to navigate these emotions with grace and wisdom. In the end, the absence of someone dear may not only be a source of pain, but also an opportunity for inner transformation. The Stoics teach us that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how we face it. We can choose to learn, grow, and ultimately find peace, not in the return of what was lost, but in the strength we gain from having faced it. Denial, the mind's first line of defense. When they first realize you're gone, there is an almost immediate sense of disbelief. It doesn't matter whether you left suddenly or gradually. The initial reaction is one of denial. The mind refuses to accept the harsh reality. They may not even understand the full depth of the loss at first. It's as if their brain is trying to protect them, offering temporary numbness to dull the sting of your absence. Denial can look different for everyone. Some may continue acting as if everything is normal, engaging in activities they used to do with you, and maintaining old habits that no longer make sense. Others might try to convince themselves that you'll come back, that this is just a phase, or that they can fill the void with other distractions. The Stoics, however, would argue that denial is a form of resistance, a futile attempt to control something that is inherently uncontrollable. Epictetus, for example, taught that while we have no power over external events, we do have power over our reaction to them. Denial may offer momentary comfort, but in the long run, it only prolongs the suffering. A true Stoic would eventually acknowledge the truth of the situation, understanding that avoiding it only deepens the emotional wound. The regret that follows. Wrestling with what could have been. Once the denial starts to fade, regret takes its place. This is the stage where they begin to ask themselves the what-if questions. What if they had said more, done more, been more present? What if they had recognized the signs earlier, or treated you differently? The mind endlessly replays the past, analyzing moments that can no longer be changed. There's an emotional heaviness in this phase, like a weight pressing down on their chest, as they reflect on what they lost and what could have been. Regret is one of the most paralyzing emotions because it keeps them trapped in the past, preventing them from moving forward. The Stoic perspective on regret is clear. It's a waste of energy. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Regret, much like denial, revolves around trying to control things that cannot be changed. Stoicism encourages us to stop focusing on the past, which is no longer within our reach, and instead focus on what we can influence, the present moment and the future we can shape. Anger, the blame game. As the sting of regret sets in, it's not uncommon for anger to emerge. They may direct this anger toward you, blaming you for the pain you caused, or toward themselves for letting it happen. Anger often arises when we feel a sense of injustice, when we think things shouldn't have happened the way they did. They might feel betrayed, hurt, or even abandoned, struggling to understand why you left, or why it all unfolded the way it did. This frustration can lead to destructive thoughts, fantasies of vengeance, or a desire to speak out in anger. From a Stoic viewpoint, anger is a toxic emotion that clouds reason and judgment. Seneca wrote extensively about how anger poisons the soul, distorting the truth and preventing us from acting rationally. The Stoic way is not to suppress anger, but to acknowledge it, examine its source, and choose not to act on it impulsively. It is through this practice of mindfulness and self-awareness that they begin to realize that their anger is not justified. Anger may feel empowering in the moment, but it ultimately harms them, and it prevents them from healing. Sadness, the longing for what was. As time goes on, sadness becomes the dominant emotion. This is the quiet, lingering ache that settles deep within their heart. Unlike the fiery intensity of anger or the frantic confusion of regret, sadness is more subtle, but no less powerful. It's the deep, unshakable longing for the connection that once existed, for the moments shared, for the plans that were never realized. It's the emptiness that comes when someone who once played such a central role in their life is no longer around. Sadness doesn't scream for attention, but it demands it nonetheless. It settles in the quiet corners of their mind, often emerging in the most unexpected moments. A passing memory, an old song, or a familiar place that reminds them of you. For the Stoic, sadness is not something to be avoided or suppressed, but something to be felt and understood. In fact, the Stoics believe that accepting sadness can lead to deeper wisdom and peace. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, encourages us to embrace the fleeting nature of all things, and in doing so, to release the grip that sadness has on us. A Stoic would not force themselves to forget, but would instead accept the sadness as part of their human experience, recognizing that it is both a reflection of their love and their capacity to heal. Loneliness, the silent companion. With sadness often comes loneliness. In the absence of someone who once mattered deeply, there's a profound sense of isolation. It's not just the absence of your physical presence, but the emptiness left in the wake of your departure. They may feel disconnected from the world, as if they no longer belong in the same spaces they once shared with you. Loneliness can make them question their worth, their value, and whether they'll ever experience that kind of connection again. The Stoics had a unique approach to loneliness. While many might view solitude as something to be avoided, the Stoics saw it as an opportunity for personal growth. Seneca wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In other words, loneliness can serve as a reminder that our peace does not depend on others, but on ourselves. The Stoic path is not about avoiding the feeling of loneliness, but about learning to be comfortable in our own company, finding contentment within ourselves, and not relying on external sources of validation for our sense of worth. The search for meaning. Why did this happen? In the midst of their emotional turmoil, they might begin to search for meaning. They'll want to know why things turned out this way, why you left, and what lesson they are supposed to learn from this experience. This quest for meaning can lead them to spiritual exploration, deep introspection, or even an attempt to understand the greater forces at play in their life. Why did they have to experience this loss? What's the point of all this pain? They may search for answers in philosophy, religion, or simply within themselves. From a Stoic perspective, the search for meaning is not a passive one. The Stoics taught that meaning isn't something we passively find, but something we actively create through our responses to life's challenges. They would argue that the loss itself is a part of the grand design of life, and that by accepting it, they are gaining insight into the impermanence of all things. Life's meaning, in Stoic thought, is found in the way we handle adversity, by cultivating resilience, wisdom, and tranquility in the face of hardship. Acceptance, finding peace in the present moment. Ultimately, after all the emotional turmoil, they may reach a point of acceptance. This is not a resignation to the fact that you're gone, but an understanding that life moves forward, whether we're ready or not. Acceptance is a profound realization that you cannot change the past and that your absence, though painful, is part of the natural flow of life. They can choose to accept what has happened without bitterness, recognizing that their emotional journey, as difficult as it has been, is a stepping stone to personal growth. The Stoic concept of ataraxia, inner peace and tranquility, is the goal in this phase. It's the ability to maintain a calm mind in the face of life's inevitable changes. Through acceptance, they realize that the absence of someone they love doesn't have to rob them of their peace. They can still live a fulfilling life with a sense of purpose and serenity by focusing on what they can control, their own thoughts, actions, and attitudes. The freedom of letting go. In the end, letting go is the key to freedom. By releasing the attachment to the past and the pain that comes with it, they find a new sense of freedom. This doesn't mean they forget or stop caring, but that they stop allowing the past to dictate their future. Stoicism teaches that true freedom comes when we learn to accept life as it is, without resistance, without regret, and without fear of what the future holds. Through this acceptance, they can step into the next phase of their life, no longer burdened by the weight of what's been lost, but empowered by the strength they've gained. In conclusion, dealing with loss is something we all face, but learning how to confront these emotions with wisdom and composure, as Stoic philosophers teach us, is what helps us grow. Loss is not an end, but a beginning, a deeper understanding of our lives and how we navigate the changes that come our way. When we learn to accept things as they are, without clinging to what we cannot change, we become truly free. If you found value in this reflection and want more content that touches your heart and helps you grow, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.